Oh dear. Hello and welcome to the QUACKCAST. This is QUACKCAST number 573. I'm Ozone Ocean and with me is Pitface and Tanserine. Hello.
Hello. Hey.
And this week we're checking about cults. Culty cults. And this was a QUACKCAST influenced by a news post by Andreas Helixfinger, who's made a really great little article about cultish types and why they could be scary and what's even more scary than some. So that's what we talk about, cults in fiction. We'll bring up, real examples, but we'll talk about some of our favorite cults from fiction. And many other interesting things. But before we get into that, we have to bring up the featured comic. Featured comic this week was a feature I did. And, well, I didn't do the feature. I featured a comic by David Abiola Alukoga, I think. So it's called, the full name of the comic is called Origin by David Abiola Alukoga. I apologize for my pronunciation. So take it away, me. Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and my feature for the week was Origin by David Abiola Alukoga. So, Danny is a bit of a pothead. Apart from that, he's just an average high school kid. That is, till he falls through a hatch in the ground and suddenly discovers he has superpowers. He starts cleaning up his neighborhood and getting rid of the local gangs, only to run into some bigger fish and find himself the target of some heavy attacks. This is a superhero origin story. There's a little more violence and swearing than most. The writing is very compressed to the point that some of the parts are skipped over, and the art is quite simplified in places. The figures and faces are great and look pretty cool in the way they're stylized, but machines and architecture are sometimes too simplified. It has an interesting format, being a 2-panel strip, so it's good for quick reading and would fit well as a traditional newspaper comic. The art is grayscale and digital. So there's some room for improvement, but that's what you expect with featured comics, because we feature things with great potential, not necessarily absolutely perfect comics. And this is something with a really good potential and an interesting little take on the superhero origin story. So I hope you enjoy Origin by David Abiola Alukoga, and it's rated M for mature. Read it. And that was the feature, which was called Origin by David Abiola Alukoga. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so next up we have the featured music. Gummels has given us a theme to a comic called Remedial Magic. Puddles and ripples of light and dappled shadows spreading outward ever wider and wider. Beads of light glow within, sparkles glitter and burn. This is a pleasantly thrumming piece of electronica that gently steps from note to note. So thank you very much for that, Gummels. Here we go. And that was our featured music. Thank you very much for that, Gum Wallace. It was the theme to Remedial Magic, which is a comic by Samuth, and it's rated T for teen. Okay, so now we're going to chat about cults. Those damn cults. Oh my god, what's that a picture of, Pit? A cultist?
Nothing. You're not supposed to call attention to it. Nobody can see it. Damn it. I hate when you do that. Make me sound like a crazy person.
Well,
it's an industrial plant picture. There is nothing exciting about it. Okay.
It looks like a cultist to me, and this is the cult QUACKCAST, so it automatically is now. So that's how it is.
Everything is cult adjacent in this cast. The cult cast.
Exactly. Precisely.
I would join that cult, though.
So, now here's something that's interesting to me. I think there is a difference between how the right wing portrays cults versus how the left wing portrays cults, or left-leaning people. So, now we were talking in our fantastic video cast about how there's the nicey cults, you know, how, and they're sort of like weirdly 1950s, everything's perfect, you know, those kind of cults, and everything has to conform, and if it doesn't conform, well, it might be brutally slaughtered, because that's how these cults are portrayed. Now, I tend to think that is the left-wing portrayal of how cults are. And I'm thinking like the more right-wing portrayal of the cults tends to be the Satanists and the baby killers and
the gay agenda.
Yeah. Like weird.
But I think
cults.
they also, to an extent, too, make it seem like oh, if you don't conform to these things, then oh no, they're gonna. I mean, you can tell which way I fall on the coin. I'm not even gonna try to hide it, but like, oh no, like, you know, if you don't conform to the gay agenda, they're gonna come and get you, and soon it's gonna be illegal to do anything. And there's usually like free speech is under attack because I can't call people slurs, or like I don't know, the big hype about safe spaces, making them out more than what they tend to be and stuff. Like, I don't know, stupid. Go away.
Oh no one would argue that they have some very beliefs based on fallacies. I mean, all that
I like beliefs based on fallacies. I'm gonna go on mute.
Somehow that gave me a mental image of a blimp, not a blip. A blimp on.
That's a big phallus.
Yes.
Sorry, Tans. Go on.
It is. I'm sorry. It's like, you know, the associations are a dangerous thing, or an excellent tool. If you're in my faith.
True. Okay, I don't mean to do that. That's naughty. But that's the Drunkduck cult that we tend to do that.
No.
It's part of our stuff. But yeah, so the blimp. Elaborate.
No. You are now free to run with it and make of it what you will.
Oh dear.
Unless you want to join my cult, then I will tell you all about it. So.
Yeah, there's just a small joining fee.
Yeah.
And then the testing fee, and the evaluation fee, and
put your hand into this box, and you'll be in.
Oh dear. Yeah, but I do think there is a difference between the right wing and left wing, because that was like those were a thing. Like, especially in the Hollywood depictions, you have those extreme nicey cultish kind of people. And we see that in so many different movies and things, Stepford Wives and stuff like that. And it's to make a point usually. It's not actually representing a cult or cultish beliefs. It's using that cultish stuff in order to represent hyperconformity and that the dangers of it. And then the more right-wing portrayals of it, you know, where we have Satan worshippers and people like painting, you know, pentagrams in blood and all that kind of stuff and killing babies, that sort of does the opposite and shows the dangers of not conforming. So
yeah,
you have those two different sides of the coin. Like, yeah, you've got to be good and stay away from the devil weed and all this, or else you'll turn into this. Stay away from the gay people, or else you turn into a Satan worshipping weirdo. Stay away from the heavy metal, or you'll turn into this.
And you'll start
Baby
writing
kill.
webcomics and posting them on the internet and listening to bad podcasts.
Or good podcasts like this. That's an interesting insight, I think. The conformity versus anti-conformity. Yeah. And they're using cults. Both of them are using cults as a way to illustrate it. To illustrate these things that they don't like, rather than actually illustrate a cult, because those, we know from reality, those cults really, you know, don't exist in that form. I mean, yes, we do have the nicey cultish people, especially among some of those Christian cults, Christian adjacent. I wouldn't call them really like solidly Christian, because proper Christianity tends to be more kind of based on older tradition rather than just, you know, individuals. And when I say individual, I mean like a living person who we bring up and we kind of imagine them having, you know, kind of fantastic charisma and cultish powers and all this kind of thing, and we sort of follow them more than the religion itself. That's why that's not really a Christian thing, because Christianity is more about following the actual religion and, you know, rather than a living person. And as soon as you elevate a living person above the religion, it sort of moves away from it actually being Christianity. And or
any other kind of like stand-in major religion.
Yeah, all the
because there have been cultists in the past that have been based off of Hinduism or all sorts of things, and they just take it and do crazy shit with it.
Yep, there still are. That's quite popular because they have the tradition of the guru in India, and that was so popular in the 60s and the 70s, even into the 80s. You know, the bloody Beatles were, George Harrison, people like that were all behind stupid gurus and their ridiculous ideas. Actually, they still do it, yeah. So that's a really good point. Say with Christianity, I was thinking of, say, Mormonism started out as just an outright cult behind, you know, Brigham Young and all those kind of people. But then it sort of became more of it went back to Christianity, kind of it fixed itself up a bit.
But it's still very much based around that person's so-called teachings, though, isn't it? I mean,
it is, but it's less weird than it was at that stage.
No, I think it's just wider spread. I mean, you have people that have come out of Mormonism and the stories that they tell and the way that they were raised. I mean, as soon as you leave it, people turn their backs on you. I mean, you lose your whole world. That's deep culty shit.
Oh yeah, it was just more extreme. Sorry, Dan. It was just
same for Jehovah's Witnesses as well.
Oh yeah, they are quite cultish in their ways. But I'm just saying, Mormonism was more extreme back then. It was more culty than it is now, because they used to have like genocides. You know, they would slaughter. There would be wars. They would fight. There's like the Mormon wars. They killed a whole town, like including the women and children. Back then, and you know, of course, the Brigham Young and all those kind of people, they were like marrying multiple multiple women and, little girls and stuff like this. So that kind of shit isn't part of that religion anymore. So it has become a bit less. Anyway, yeah, tons. Jehovah's Witnesses, very true. That's
yeah, and there are like for example, technically in religion as well, when you have different sects, some of these sects are simply different interpretations of dogma, and that's pretty, not normal. What I mean to say, it's not actually a cult, it's just a different sect. But you also get sects that are quite cultish, to the point where you get someone that is basically like a prophet or a super holy priest, or what have you, some kind of high profile, super anointed, extreme authority representative of God, and people stop experiencing religion. I mean, experiencing their religion as other people do, and they simply receive it from this single one person that deviates them a lot from what actually is the core dogma, if you like, even for, different interpretations and different sects and different denominations and what have you. So within religion, you can have all these cults, but you also can have them outside of religion, like for example Scientology. In my opinion, that's a cult, and the way that they, and they are not actually religious. I mean, they sound like a religion, but that's because they are a cult. Again, my opinion. Okay, so
careful there, we'll get sued.
Well,
I'm joking. We don't care. Scientologists aren't really listening to QUACKCAST. Yeah. I just, funnily enough, saw that episode of South Park for the first time where they make fun of Scientology, and it really wasn't much to it. It was just like a direct attack on Scientology. I think they started out, with the religious angle. It was just because L. Ron Hubbard deliberately wanted to get the tax breaks that are within American law to do with churches in order, he was just a bit of a con artist, and he just wanted to set up something where he could, have an easy life and get a lot of money, and that's how he did it. And it sort of snowballed. And I don't know much else about it. Like, for some reason, it's gotten such a huge following and a hierarchy and so much money. I don't know. It's weird. But yeah. So how about your favorite portrayals of cults in fiction? Now, Andreas has given the example of this group called the Oros, or Oro. So they're a cult within some game, and they use sound in order to control people and turn them crazy and stuff like that, which is rather interesting. But my favorite depiction of, well, not my favorite, but one of a good depiction of cults that I see a lot is the ones in Warhammer, especially Warhammer 40k, if you've ever seen that. I know, Pitt, you're familiar with Warhammer, aren't you? Warhammer 40k.
I was painting some minis, but I don't know much about the lore.
So in that, it's like multiple cults upon cults upon cults. They have, one of the main cults are the cult of the Emperor. So there's different kind of aliens and humans and all this kind of stuff. And so the humans all worship the Emperor, who is like this living man god. He's lived for 40,000 years or something like this, trapped in a golden sarcophagus that keeps him alive. It's, you know, machines and all this kind of stuff, and they worship him. So that's the imperial cult, and I think it's sort of based on Roman kind of stuff, you know, because there was an imperial cult there. So that's the imperial cult. Then they had the machine cult, where these are humans as well, and they worship like a different kind of version of the imperial cult. They worship the machine spirit that they think imbues all the machines they create with life and, you know, motion and stuff like that. So they worship the machine cult. So it's a slightly different version. Then we have chaos cultists who worship the avatars of chaos, because there's these 4 chaos gods, and particularly so the chaos gods would the chaos worshippers would be like the worshippers of Slaanesh, which is people who like sex cults, bondage and discipline, all that kind of stuff. And then there's the Xanish, who worship like the hidden meaning, so that would be more like QAnon people who worship the hidden knowledge and magic. And then maybe there might be some people worshipping the Nurgle god. He's the god of plague and stuff like that, so he'd be our anti-vaxxer god. So they'd be worshipping him. And yeah, they're interesting. Some of these cultists would be people who know they're worshipping the gods, and others would be people who just, you know, like sex fanatics and stuff like this, or hedonists, and they didn't even realize that they're bringing about, you know, they're worshipping chaos. And then we have the gene stealer cultists. So these gene stealers are things like they're based on, in the Warhammer 40k world, they're based on you know, the alien who from Ridley Scott's film and David Cameron's film.
Yeah.
You know, they impregnate people with using
xenomorphs.
Xenomorphs, yeah. They impregnate people using the face huggers, and they burst out the stomach. And so in the gene stealers in the 40k universe is kind of based on that. So someone will be infected with a gene stealer alien, and then he'll be incredibly charismatic, and people kind of will psychically be convinced to worship this person, and they can't see that this thing's an alien. This is a horrible monster. They sort of see it as a beautiful, lovely person. They all come together to worship and help it. So it's like you know, the thing with the cuckoo babies, how the cuckoos will lay their eggs in other birds' nests, yeah, and then the mother and father bird will try and, you know, raise it as their own. The gene stealers are like that. Like they're like the cuckoo, and these you know, these people will protect it and help it, and unwittingly they'll unleash the gene stealer infection upon their community. So they're charismatic cultists. So yeah, the world of 40k is just built on cults, and all kinds of different variations on them, and it's good, and it kind of gives us analogues of cultists in our real world. You know, like we have people who are hedonists, and they all get together to be hedonistic together, and that can turn into cultish behavior, especially when people sort of take it too far and make it more ritualized. And then we have, like, you know, anti-vaxxers, and that can definitely become very cultish when, you know, they have this kind of weird hidden knowledge. It's not just their own kind of developed knowledge that they have of, you know, oh, vaccinations, oh, don't know what they're doing to my body. They have kind of weird layered knowledge that they share with each other. Oh yeah, this stuff causes autism, and it does this and it does that, and yeah, oh, and this person's like getting vaccinated. We must hate them. We must fill up their Facebook with messages about how they're abusing their children by vaccinating them. You know, they have this kind of group think. So yeah, then they can be exactly like the Nurgle cultists. And then we have the hidden knowledge cultists, the Xanish. And they very much are like the QAnon people, because they become divorced from reality, and they all have this secret knowledge together, and it's, you know, it's passed on, and They have their weird kind of shared knowledge, and it erupts into actual real world behavior where they were storming the Capitol building and doing all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a really good idea to look at fictional versions of cults, because then it can help not inoculate you against joining ones, because I think we're all of us always vulnerable to crazy ideas, no matter how sensible and well read we are. Any of us can be sucked into kind of weirdness, but it can help us recognize the weirdness, and it can help us prevent us from doing it. It won't absolutely prevent us, but it can help us from doing that. I mean, what do you guys think now that I've rambled on about that stuff?
Well, one of my favorite depictions of a cult is one that you hate, Midsommar. But the reason why I like that one so much...
The hippie cultists.
There's a lot out there. I don't know why you just picked that one, but but the way that movie depicts the cult is they're not evil outright. They're not evil at all. They do things that are quite destructive to their members. And those members choose to do those things to themselves, but that's through indoctrination of the cult and stuff. But I like the nuance of it in that it, in a way, helps the main character with trauma that she's been dealing with, but not necessarily in a way that's good. It kind of leaves it open to you at the end to kind of decide where you think the cards lie, like, without saying too much about it. But I like that depiction of it because it, to me, I mean, I think it does feel like a kind of a true depiction. Not kind of, it does feel like a true depiction, because you can understand the way that, she finds them as she has this hole in her life, and the person that she relies on, her boyfriend, isn't helping her with it. And these people do, and they embrace her. She becomes the May Queen and stuff, and at the end, she's one of them. So
yes,
I like that depiction. Yeah. Not necessarily for good. I don't think it's a good outcome. I think it's a questionable outcome. But that's part of the draw of the movie, though, is it doesn't go extreme one way or the other. It just kind of lets you deal with it.
The portrayal of the cult there is obviously like it's got a mixture of influences, and one of the big ones is New Age belief and hippies, those kind of things, and a bit of Norse religion there is sort of weirdly mixed in. But one of the most interesting things is this is a cult rather than just based on the usual charismatic individual or whatever. This is a cult based on the members of a town, members of families that are all together. So it's only based there. And we see that in the old Wicker Man film as well. It's a weird town where people all have their weird belief together. So that's an interesting thing. So we don't see that too often in fiction. I mean, we do a bit.
We do, actually. I think in real life we don't see it as much. Usually you do have a leader or a prominent figure, at least to some extent.
But a town-based cult.
What?
It's a community-based cult rather
than...
than...
So community-based cults still usually tend to have a leader of the community who is the one that around who they all cluster. But in fiction, you may have just a community that does this. And even if you cut the head, for example, like the mayor or whoever is the leader, there is this feeling that they would still go on and do the same thing without an issue. I mean, that's how they live. But yeah, the one cult that I like is completely grotesque and totally like not elegant at all. But I like the cult of Kali in Indiana Jones. I think they are.
Oh God. Yeah. God, is that a racist kind of cult? I'm not sure.
It is totally racist, and I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that actual Kali worshippers would feel extremely offended, and I'm extremely sorry, and I don't feel that they have anything to do with it. It's super cartoonish. It has like no association seriously with. Actually, I think Kali is super cool as like her mythology is amazing, but beyond that, I love them. They're so they enjoy being cruelly evil. Like it's
Yeah,
like,
ridiculously so. Is that a Spielberg film? I'm pretty sure it is.
I think so. I think so. I mean, all Indiana Jones films are. I think.
I thought
right?
so.
Yeah, he had
So-
this weird thing. Like he was, as a director, doing these presumably family-friendly films, but really he was he's a horror director.
Yeah.
And all his films that like have a real element like of extreme horror. The Indiana Jones ones, particularly.
Yeah.
It really
And-
comes out with that cult because those scenes, like I've seen maybe that Indiana Jones movie once or twice in my whole life, that I remember. But those scenes in particularly, I remember they really scared me as a kid, and I think part of the reason is, well, I mean, you got like, people being lowered into the lava, which is scary. Kids, kids in lava, but like also just that there are so many people standing around letting this happen, and I think that's one of the reasons why cults are so scary, because there's can be so many people around, but if you're not with them, if you're not part of their group, then you are absolutely alone. That's the scary fucking thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember like the first time you see it. I also saw it as a kid, and I actually remember the first time that I saw it, and it didn't scare me like Poltergeist or something like that. But I was just like slack-jawed as I was watching it. It's like how, like the how. Like, I remember this huge question mark above my head, together with an exclamation mark. If I was a cartoon, that would be my bubble. Watching this. and it stuck with me. Mostly what stuck with me was how everyone was taking like hedonistic joy out of the human sacrifice. That was what like really hit me like this. So yeah, kudos to the horror.
Well, you think about it, the way they depict the cult in that film has way more to do with South American, like Aztec, as least as they're described by the Spanish, rather than Indians. I don't know much about Indian religion, but I don't really remember much about them. Human sacrifice. I know there was a bit, but it was usually to do with strangling and stuff like that. But yeah, that's very much an Aztec thing for cutting out living hearts of people, and that is not just a Spanish thing. That's they actually have that depicted in their murals. It's bas relief kind of sculpture.
Yeah, but this isn't. Yeah, I was about to I won't jump in because I know that I'm just the archaeologist, anthropologist in me is like, but they're not Aztec. Don't get it twisted. Those aren't Aztecs. So.
Yes. For the record, I have to say that I find Kali's mythology or lore, fascinating, absolutely fascinating, and what she represents, because she's the avatar of the goddess Parvati, but who is, I think, a work goddess. No, excuse me for misrepresenting stuff if I am. But more enraged, like she's the pure rage of a war goddess. Like, how metal is that?
Like she's
That's
got all the
amazing.
severed heads hanging off of her belt and stuff.
Yeah, and the necklace and stuff, and she's all blue, and she is still like the wife of Shiva, and she still cares for him, because there is this myth that they were fighting some demonic entities that I forget their names, and Parvati got so pissed that out of her forehead Kali jumped out, and she basically, I think it was like a giant who, every drop of his blood created the clone of him, so he kept creating a lot of himself. Couldn't be beaten. So Parvati was really pissed, and Kali came out, and she grabbed this guy and basically squeezed him like an orange and sucked out all of his blood and swallowed it. Of course, he couldn't then multiply again, and then like she killed him. But then she was still enraged, and she continued dancing her death war dance and killing everyone. But when they called Shiva to stop her, he let her step on him, and that stopped her because she didn't want to hurt him, although she was the rage of the war goddess, and she still said, "Oh my God, no, okay," and she stopped. That's awesome. That's so fascinating. Yes, okay. Sorry for the tangent there, but I had to say it because really it has nothing to do with Indiana Jones's cult. But I still like it.
Nothing has to do with that. Yeah.
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 Yeah, we like Indiana Jones because it's a long way from reality, and
Yeah.
it is its own reality where there are aliens and there are.
We don't talk about that. That never happened.
There are 1,000-year-old knights, and
yeah,
he's got a lot more in common with Lara Croft, Tomb Raider kind of world.
Totally, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, quite a bit of joy. Well, one thing, I mean, the genesis of this QUACKCAST is, of course, Andreas Helixfinger's post about cults in games, and it's weird that cultists in games are usually portrayed as being very low level, in that these are chaff. These are just like grunts that you go through in order to get to someone more dangerous. Cult members are just, they don't think for themselves. They're not much of a they can be very scary, but they're not much of a challenge. And they're just drones, basically. So that's an interesting depiction of cult members.
Yeah.
I don't think that really accords with the reality. I just think that fits into a role in games. I think cult members are a lot more scary than that. They're not really drones. They
Yeah. Oh, they can be. I mean, if you are a cult member, you are in for some serious cognitive dissonance, and that cannot be resolved while you are in the cult. So, by sheer reaction to this cognitive dissonance that you are going to have, you're going to be very easy to provoke and very aggressive to keep any stimuli that enhance this cognitive dissonance, that what you're doing perhaps is not the correct cosmology or whatever. So then you get a lot of aggressive reactions, and depending on the type of cult that you are in, those aggressive reactions could be extremely dangerous. And yeah,
Yeah. I mean, they could be very dangerous, but I just don't feel like drone
yeah, I was actually agreeing with you that they are
okay.
not drones.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry if that wasn't obvious.
But yeah, they do fill that role in games and things. I wonder why. Maybe it comes out of their role in movies and stuff like that. That's just how they have
I think
been.
they're easier to, especially in games. I mean, you need drones because you design a lot of mocks for the main character to go through. So I think that's
True.
easy.
And I think you were onto something too with the way you were describing them. Like, a game, well, usually can't be made of like bosses, right? You need the build up. And so, if you're fighting a bunch of cultists, people who, like you said, can be scary, but are mortal people like you and I, who can die. What if you meet the thing that they're worshiping, right? And that usually kind of comes after. So they're usually kind of the build up to the main event.
Yeah, it's a level up.
Which is very useful in storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good point. And games do tell a story, even if they're first-person action fighters. They're all based on story structure. Yeah. That's very true. Have you guys, Pit? You've sort
joined
of
any cults?
What's that? Joined a cult?
Nothing. Is being dumb. Yeah.
You do have a.
What were you gonna say?
A kind of like I've never had cults in Pinky and Bottom's Waitress and Chance. I don't think you've had cults maybe in your coming, but Pit,
unless you count the Nazis.
Yes, Pit, you sort of had a cultish behavior for the worshippers of Exus, or at least with when those people get brainwashed, they become like a 1950s kind of cults kind of thing.
Oh yeah, a little stint in Putrid Meat. Yeah, that was just fun. I don't know much what to say about it, but other than maybe to Tanja's point that sometimes it's just fun to make weird, wacky, dangerous, culty characters and stuff, and they're just fun to watch sometimes. Yeah, I don't know. It's been a while since I made that.
Well, I mean, is it a way of illustrating some kind of extreme behavior that you disapprove of, or that you feel like is dangerous?
Yeah, probably. I mean, there's so many other people who have made webcomics. There's a lot of backstory and details and stuff that never made it into Putrid Meat. Actually, I am going to be having some cultist stuff sometime in Inhabitants. I think that might be, yeah. But for instance, when it comes to Exus, the reason why when Bones comes back, Septica is completely decimated is that while he was gone, Exus took control because there was this big influx of mutants from the wastelands and stuff, and it seemed like Exus was keeping them at bay, and people really started to turn towards Exus then instead of Felix, who was just basically, a painted king, more or less, just didn't really do anything, which for a while is what Septicans wanted, but then Exus really started seeming like he was stepping up, and then he had General Warhead behind him and stuff like that, and all of these big, the grunts, the big pig soldiers and stuff, and so the Septicans started to really feel protected with him. But so as they started to build faith in him, that's when he's a big old fucking mutant too. And when people started to have faith in him, he would I can't remember how exactly I thought of it, is in a way kind of like would take their life force in a sense, or like would do something. I don't totally remember what, but he basically killed the entire city. Almost like a vampire, I guess. He sustained himself off of it. And that's the basis for really culty shit, right? In order for him to actually succeed, he needed people to believe in him. And when they did, they suffered for it. So,
great illustration.
Good pickup. I totally forgot about that. Thank you, Oz.
Great illustration of cultish behavior and the dangers of it. When you get behind an individual and you sacrifice what makes you, I think that's one of the things, isn't it? It's not just being controlled. It's subsuming your own personality to someone else.
Yeah.
And the extreme danger in that, like we can think of real world examples like Jonestown and the Branch Davidians and what happened with them. That freaking idiot, that David Koresh. And people now kind of like more right-wing people are saying, oh no, it was the FBI, like they fired the first shot and they're the ones who were responsible for burning down the thing. But in reality it was sort of like there was a bit of an overreaction, but there was a reason this group had 7 bazillion guns and bullets and firebombs all ready to go. So it wasn't the
whole
FBI,
thing was a tragedy, of course, but it just I don't know. It's even outside of those really extreme examples, I mean, shit that you see nowadays with like MLMs and stuff, or like cults of personality with like big political figures and stuff.
Multi-level marketing.
Yeah. I mean, when you get into seeing how a lot of people get recruited into that and stay and are made to stay through like, rhetoric or the same kind of phrases you hear over and over and over again, it's really quite cruel, and it's very made in a specific way.
Designed. They have certain ways of talking, like you're saying, certain phrases they'll repeat,
and like they also like encourage people to cut ties with people who tell them that it's a bad idea.
Yes.
There's lots of like evidence of this too, of people going on calls and talking to their teams, and people go in there and record it and upload it, and like just the terrible shit that they say. And to your point also of like, having people kind of divest themselves a little bit, or like even becoming like more vulnerable with things. People will be encouraged to like, share your traumas and the things that hurt you, because that makes people connect to you, because that's exactly the kind of people that they're after, people who are hurt or are having a hard time. There's a lot of lower income people or people of different races and stuff that get sucked into this, not exclusively, but there are MLMs out there too that like I forget which ones, I get them all mixed up interchangeably, but that will like focus on Latinas and like
Herbalife, I think. Not no.
Is it?
I think it is Herbalife, but
Herbalife is a big one.
Yeah, and like the people that are in difficult situations and suffering from things, and then they'll have them, then they have to get through the barrier, right? Of like, oh, it's only this much money to sign up. You'll make it all back, and you'll what do they call it? We'll pour into you. I hate that fucking phrase.
Yeah, it sounds a little disgusting as well.
It does, doesn't it? Don't pour into me. I didn't give you permission to fucking do that.
Exactly.
Christ.
You.
Yeah, it's gross.
Oh my
Good
God.
point. That reminds me of an excellent depiction of that kind of cultish behavior that was in anime called Welcome to NHK, where you've got a NEET or a hikikomori, you know, the kind of thing in Japan where these individuals, they grow up they become a teen, they grow up, and then they sort of close off into themselves, and they become extremely agoraphobic. They want to go outside their room. You know, they fail their exams or whatever, or get fired from their jobs, and then they just don't want to interact with people anymore, so they stay in their room and then they just watch anime and collect games and things. So this guy is one of those, but he's slowly trying to get himself out of it, and he wants to become a normal human being. And in part of that journey, he meets someone who used to be someone in his life before he became a NEET, which was this girl he had a bit of a crush on. And he's thinking, oh my God, she's interested in me again. Maybe this will help me get out. Oh, fantastic. This will help me break out of this, horrible situation I found myself in. And she's extra happy and, really bright, smiley kind of thing. And she's saying, yeah, and this is great business opportunity that I know, I can get you into, and that will really help you. And it turns out it is a freaking cult based around multi-level marketing.
Oh my God! Do you remember the craze with timeshares?
Yeah. Oh jeez, yeah.
Oh my God! I remember that it was so hilarious. Like at least 20 more, maybe 25 years ago. We wanted to just rent a house abroad. That's all we wanted, to just go abroad and look around Vienna or something like that. So we went to this quote-unquote realtor who sat us down and said, you know what, you could have this trip for free. And we couldn't actually disengage that, because he sat us down and he had this huge blank block of, like a pad of paper, and he kept drawing in it and changing the pages. He probably went through the entire block of, like the entire notepad, telling us how we would make bank if we joined into his timeshare pyramid.
Yeah.
And they are very clingy. Like he kept us there for at least an hour and a half while we were trying to disengage. We were not even interested in it. So it can be super hard, especially if you are not used to being assertive, and we were not, as a family, we were not assertive back then, and you are not used to shutting down people. It is extremely easy to get reeled in just a little bit every single time until you find yourself
stuck,
entangled,
like quicksand.
Yeah. Exactly. It's creepy to think about it.
Like it could start with like, oh, I don't want to be rude. I don't want to tell this person no. What does it hurt me if I sit and listen to them for a while? And then it's just, there comes a time where you have to put foot down and be assertive, or else they'll just take you all the way to the sacrificial altar.
Reminds me of those Pit, when we were in Greece, in Athens, and there was those guys who were saying, "Oh, my friend," and they came up to us and they put the friendship bracelets on our wrists. "Oh, my friend," putting it on there, and then €5, like, demanding money.
The first bracelet is always for free. It's the other one that you supposedly pay for.
None of these were free. But Pit basically just told them where to go. She wasn't taking that at all. She wasn't going to be like I was thinking of, trying to be polite kind of thing. And Pit's just going, "No, fuck off, like, get away from us. I'll call the police."
I did not say that. I did not say it was. I did not. I was.
I did not.
Politely assertive. And I was not, I'm like, no, I didn't have the money. And then every time I'd cross that way again, the guy would shout at me, he goes, what would he say? Be happy! Be happy!
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I get there's desperation there. I mean, people in that kind of thing are in a real bad way. It was just, I don't know. It made me not want to go through that way anymore, which is a shame. It was a pretty neat square, but
But
I don't know.
that tactic is not just, a thing that happened with those people in Greece. That's all over the world that happens. There's these fake Buddhist monks in Cambodia and Thailand that do that as well. They put the bracelets on you and they say, yes, yes, you're blessed. You're blessed, you're blessed. Now give me money.
We also have like if you ever come to Greece, there are some things you have to know about people that try to rope you in very touristy areas, like around all the ruins and the archaeological sites. You would meet people like that trying to reel you in, reel you in. And one type is the guys with the bracelets. The other type is the gypsy person, because usually they are gypsies who offer you a flower because they're extremely charming, and then they want you to give them money so that they will not, they will tell you your fortune, or they, just not to curse you or to, make it stick, things like that.
The flower is universal too. They do that all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So usually they'll get a kid to do it, like a little girl, a cute little girl will offer you flowers. Oh, beautiful lady, here's flowers, and they'll push it on.
Usually it's grown women that do it over here, at least that I have seen. So
yes, whatever works. But it's interesting, like we're talking about, like, with the timeshare stuff and this, it seems like we're diverting from cults, but it is like cultish because
it breaks down your barriers. That's what it is. It's how, so these are scams, but they're similar to cults in the way that they break down your barriers to get you to do what they want.
Also transgress like normal human interaction. Like they take advantage of the fact that you wouldn't say no and that you would be polite, and it would be not a good thing in order to tell them to piss off. So cults do take advantage of those same things. Like Scientology with the personality test. Oh, just come in for a personality test. It's free. Just we'll do that.
Yeah.
And that's how
we do have them. They are in a specific street that if you're a local, everyone knows and just goes on the other sidewalk so that they will not be stopped for the personality test. It's like, when you are in this street, just be on the sidewalk on the right, not on the one on the left.
There was a weird one one of my coworkers discovered years ago. Just in one of the buildings down from where I work, there was a sign that was suddenly erected with a little picture of a coffee cup that was made into like a little happy face. So the base of it was like a curve and like two little eyes, and the hair was the steaming coffee. And she thought, oh, geez, a new coffee place. Great, I'll check that out. And she went in there, and it was a bunch of Korean cultists who offer coffee as a way of getting you in and to be part of their weird Christian cult. It was, but Korean cultists. So that was a strange one, the happy face coffee people.
Oh, I remember, like, if anyone is into Korean dramas, there is an excellent depiction of a cult. I will find the title of I don't remember the title of the series, but a depiction of a Korean cult that is not only a cult, but it is actually also super powerful, like tons of money, and with members in all the right strategic social infrastructure spots, if you like, and how they basically are a serial killing cult, because in order to, and they don't do it because they like to kill, although they don't not like to kill, but they do it just to expand their power, their political power. And you realize that this is a cult quite a ways in. You don't realize that you have to deal with a cult, and we are talking full blown with this mysterious religious figure that everyone is worshipping, and very specific rituals and very specific prophecies and so on and so forth. And the finale is perfection. It's not a bad ending. It's not a good ending. It is just a perfect ending. And I'm going to find the series right now, but check it out. I mean, I think it is one of the best depictions of a cult on TV. So I'll just find it now.
That's interesting. It makes me think that there are so many depictions of cults in anime too. It's a really popular thing to depict the enemy, or the antagonists, as cult members in anime, because the real life version of that is because they did have quite a few terrible cults in Japan. Specifically the Om Supreme Truth Cult, which was a really bad bunch who tried the only ones who do this, but it's in anime, it's like represented massively, but they were a real life death cult, and they wanted to create mass panic and kill thousands of people on the subway trains. Do you remember that? They created sarin gas.
Right.
And they released it, and they were planning to kill like thousands of people on the trains, but it didn't work out. They only killed very few people. But yeah, they had planned it for years. I believe that they had bought farms, and they bought them in Western Australia here in where I am, in order to create the gas and test it on animals. So it was a big thing. So that was the real life version, but in anime, there's a huge fad for death cults, and these people who are weirdly brainwashed.
Even Akira had that one cult in the movie. I'm not sure how it went in the manga, but I mean, they weren't death culty or anything like that, I don't think. But yeah, it's pervasive, and I think it makes sense when a culture or a country or whatever experiences something so traumatic. It often does find its way into the media and the things it creates, because that's how they kind of that's how you process things, right? Like in the same way that after 9/11 there was all sorts of things that came out here that have to do with like terrorists, or even before then, but yeah, I can see how something so painful like that would spur a lot of stories about that kind of thing.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and it's it also ties into some more deeper cultural beliefs, I think, or different things that have happened in Japan, weird cultish behavior, like those in the beginning of the Second World War, there were a bunch of right-wing kind of cultists who behaved in certain ways, trying to kill politicians with their swords, things like that. So it's a country that lends itself to that kind of weird extremism. But none of us are immune to that. I suppose in every country there's examples of cultists who do their weird kind of bizarre.
I mean, we've had many here in the U.S. I mean, especially back in of course, the 60s and 70s, even as far back as the 50s, maybe, I guess. I think there's even one up here in Wisconsin that still exists. There's still like billboards for it. I don't know how many members there are. I think they fell from grace a long time ago. I don't remember what they're called, um, but yeah. I mean, back to what? Oh, excuse me. I am 12. I just hit puberty, but but I mean, back to what you were saying before about like the hippie cults in a lot of popular media and stuff like that, and how based off of a lot of the stuff that happened in the 60s and 70s and whatnot. I mean, to use a very well known example, of course, Jonestown, and how that started off was, I think it was even back, was it as far as back as the 50s? I can't remember. But when it started, it was, I mean, many would say that its aims, the messages that it used to bring people in, were quite good. Anti-racism, better equality for people, drawing people together, ending war and stuff like that. And it just became so wrapped within itself that by the time things got as bad as they did, there was as many as what happens with many cults, at least a lot of the ones over here, um, they're sure that the world's out to get them and that there's no respite anywhere, that there's only one solution, and that is to die. And unfortunately, there have been a number of things that have gone that way. There's a really good podcast. It's called Cults.
Mm-hmm.
Simple enough. Um, and every week, I'm not sure if they're still doing it, but yeah, every week they would release a new episode about a new cult, unless it was like a two-parter. But I mean, it's just mind-blowing to go back through their catalog and realize just how many there have been, um, throughout mostly modern history. So yeah, I don't know. It's Yeah, but I mean, just to your point that it can happen and it does happen to anybody.
And, well,
And
I
quite
mean,
a lot.
cults aren't a modern thing either. They go as far back as humanity goes back. A lot of religions, proper religions, started out that way. And as we said before, like, you can have a normal religion and people take advantage of that in order to branch off with their little cultish version. But yeah, there's been so many examples. It's harder to see that when you go back in history, but there are a few standout versions. And some people have been accused of being culty, like the Templars were accused of cultish behavior, but I think pretty much 100% of that is made up in order to, like, it was a political move in order to destroy the group and get money and stuff like that from them. But there definitely have been. I remember, what was it, the millennialists and the around that period when there was the first millennium. There were a lot of weird kind of branching off cults from Catholicism and stuff like this. People who are sort of thinking the revelation's about to happen. The Antichrist is going to be born on the world, and we're going to have to fight the devil and stuff like that. There's a good depiction of that cult in The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco. Kind of what's left over from people being cultish. The characters are kind of dealing from fallout of people who had been in millennialist cults. So that's a very interesting book and movie if you want to check that out. I haven't seen the movie. It's got who's that guy in it from Indiana Jones, the third one, with the beard. He plays his dad.
Oh yeah, Sean Connery.
Sean
right?
Connery, that's it. And Christian Slater, I think, is in it as well. I think it's a great book, very, very good. So yeah, there's cults have been with us for as long as there's been us.
Absolutely.
Imagine there were cavemen cults.
Well, I mean, I think it would be unwise for us to assume that, um, major religions were the default of the world, probably things did start off with, and for a while were the norm with, having smaller cults, smaller bands of people that find power in something and run with that. So the default of the world is not major religion.
Yeah.
Now it seems like it is, but
they have to start off somewhere. And there's always been, like, there'll always be charismatic individuals who gather people around them. Like, you brought up Nazism before, or Tance brought up Nazism.
Tance did.
And there's definitely a bit of, a cultish following in that, in Nazism. Like, it would be a mistake to say Nazism was a cult, as it wasn't. It was a political movement. But there was a bit of a core of cultish behavior in it, and there were people who behaved like cultists. So, yeah, that was definitely part of it.
We see that kind of thing with some political figures today still. So,
oh, yeah, especially strongmen. They are charismatic individuals who, like, develop a following around them. Putin, Doyan, Duterte, Trump, so many people like that.
Yeah, especially when people start to become afraid that the traditional way that they believe is the way to live, when they believe that that's being threatened in some way, they usually tend to turn to these kind of strongman individuals, right? Because, well, I'm gonna get all art school on you, but I don't have the brain for this today. But I mean, like, you and I live in societies that traditionally have championed strong, masculine characteristics. And so when traditional ways of living come under attack, or whatever you want to call it, people turn to so-called strongmen and believe, I guess, I don't know, that it lives on some way, the John Waynes of the world, whatnot. So
John Wayne, yeah, that's a good kind of example, because you think of, he's like the characteristic version of, that masculinity kind of thing, and he really was that kind of, not super masculine. He would have believed he was, but he was a real kind of toxic dick who espoused all the kind of, like, caricature ideas of what we would think of being, very toxic kind of masculinity. He really did think that way. He was a dick, but an entertaining character actor. So, yeah, Tance, you've got a fantastic example. Well, I will put that in the QUACKCAST notes.
Yeah. And there is another one as well, that because I took all this time that I was silent to find the title. I could not remember it for the life of me. Anyway, but I also came across another excellent depiction of how cults can be created when something, quote unquote, real does happen. And that is, again, K-drama, and it is called Hellbound. And it is about these weird creatures that announce someone is going to be killed by them in an X amount of days or time or whatever. And then they do come and they horribly murder you. So around all of this, there is built this cult of people that try to purge those that get the mark before the creatures come. And the point isn't the creatures, the point is the cult and the study of the cult dynamics and how society morphs. because of this extremely frightening thing that is happening. So that is also an excellent drama.
Oh, that's
with an
interesting.
excellent ending. So, yes, finally.
That's interesting. It reminds me of just as another tangent. Reminds me of the Planet of the Apes, and we have the battle beneath the Planet of the Apes. I think it's the third one, where they have the cult that's obsessed with the nuclear missile that they have. You know, it's a real thing, and this cult has grown up around that because there's the they hold the keys to the destruction of the world, and they worship it as a death cult should. But initially, the characters are sort of, you know, brought in because they're humans. Oh my god, they're not the damn dirty apes. These people are actually humans. And finally, and yeah, it turns out they are horrible, horrible people who worship the nuclear weapon. So yeah, it changes and morphs. Things can change and morph society, and they can result in cults. All right, I think we've sort of reached the end of the subject, so
yes,
let's wrap it up. Thank you very much for listening to the CultCast. Thank
you. Join us.
Don't forget to pay.
Make sure to pay your monthly dues.
Exactly. That's in our Patreon, of course. We have several levels. Now the Illuminati. Whoa. See the benefits they get. It's amazing. All right. Bye-bye, people.
Bye-bye.
Bye.